Welcome, everyone. Today we are sitting down with Kevin Durman. Kevin, you come from a very wide background in AI, um, working with enterprises. You are working on your PhD right now. You have your master's, your MBA, and you are working on that PhD in AI and working with slalom. From what I understand, you are the slalom and AWS expert in downtown Toronto.
Correct.
If you could tell us a couple more words about what it is that you do.
Yeah. So, firstly, hi, Alina. Great to be with you this evening. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm really looking forward to chatting to you about agentic AI and how to measure it correctly. So, if I look at what do I do, um, you are right that the majority of my time is spent looking at AI and discussing AI use cases with clients, and especially within the AWS realm. So I look after our AWS business across Canada for Slalom. And Slalom is a consultancy. It's a global company, about 15,000 people globally, in about 49 markets throughout the world. And we focus on end-to-end consulting from the strategy side right through to software development, to AI, data, you name it, we do it. And across all the hyperscalers and all the products. Very excitingly, last year, we launched this AI innovation lab that you see behind me. And the idea behind this was really to help our clients bridge this gap between this rapidly accelerating technology that we're being bombarded with on a daily basis. And we're talking about things like AI chatbots, we're talking about agentic AIs, we're talking about multi-agents, MCP servers, you name it. All of these new terms, all of these new technologies are coming at all of us. And I can only imagine that as somebody who lives and breathes this on a daily basis, and I feel overwhelmed every single time I go onto LinkedIn or the news, I can only imagine what the average business person feels like out there. And so we wanted to build something that we felt could close that gap between what they're hearing, the noise that's out there, and actually see the stuff working for themselves, where they can touch the technology, they can interact with the chatbots, see how the agents are working, and understand the technology. So that's what we're doing, and I'm doing my PhD at the moment. I'm working in the brain-computer interface area and looking at the creation of synthetic EEG data. So if anybody's interested in that, another discussion for another time.
That's exciting. That's pretty much hooking up your brain waves and having AI interpret it and understanding what it is that you're thinking or feeling and
Correct.
converting it
Correct.
to
Correct.
some data. That's a very interesting area of research. So welcome. Today's talk is reimagining enterprise ROI, more applicable for those of us working across enterprises, banks, financial, insurance, big companies. How do you measure it? How do you implement AI agents, and how do you measure that impact of the AI applications across?
Correct. So let's get stuck into that. Um, So just picking up from what I was saying about all of this technology that's coming at us and all of AI that has been embedded into every single thing that we are almost dealing with on a daily basis. There's hardly a product that's out there that does not have a co-pilot or some kind of AI element to it. Now, if you're in business and you are either a CIO or you're creating a business use case, it is imperative, obviously, that you are able to measure the impact of that technology that you are implementing. And one of the challenges of this AI world is how do you actually quantify the value of the solution that you are putting in place? What initially happened was the moment we went to a AI chatbot type environment, everybody looked at, okay, so if I'm putting in this AI chatbot, I'm going to be replacing a human who would normally be doing that work. That I can quantify quite easily. I take the person's salary that I'm paying them, I divide that by the number of calls or responses. So if it's a phone call, it would be a call. If it's a ticket, it would be attending to that ticket. And I can just divide it and say, well, that's the cost. And if I can divert 50% of my traffic away from this, there's my ROI. Along comes Agentic, and Agentic AI removes a lot of that. It removes a lot of that simplicity. There's beauty in it as well, because the beauty is that it can do so much more and therefore is worth so much more. But if we look at 80% of companies have used some kind of Gen AI, only 20% of that 80% actually measures it correctly and can measure what the real impact is of that technology that they're putting in place. Let's compare, again, going back to that chatbot, or even take it simpler to like a process that somebody has. And that process, let's take it, for example, a bank puts in a process, or a trading desk has a process. If somebody wants to do a particular transaction and buy a particular stock, and they do it online through the app, it will need to go through a whole lot of checks and to check, have they got the right amount of credit, or do they have cash within their account? Can this really be impacted, and can it be transacted in this way? So when you have that flow and something changes in that flow, let's say there's a particular database that you were querying to check their cash balances, and that database is now moved to somewhere else. In the normal RPA format of looking for those checks and balances, as something moves, it breaks. You cannot have that. But in the agentic form, it goes for the end result. The agent is trying to achieve an end result, and it will figure out the way on how to get the necessary information. So think of the first type example that I spoke about, that RPA type, or robotic process automation, being almost like a train that's on a track. That train gets on that track, it's got one way to go. If it needs to change the track at any one point, it needs somebody to press that button and change that track for it. But what often happens in business is this kind of scenario. The track is not quite that straight. We have databases that move where they are. We have different kinds of information that are stored in different formats. And so we really need the agility of this kind of a vehicle, of an all-terrain vehicle. And that's really what Agentic is. Agentic is the intelligence to actually know the right path to go through and to learn the right path as it goes through. To tie that into the ROI, because it has that ability, there is so much more value that it can bring to the organization than just the transaction itself. So it's this machine-to-machine handoff that we speak about, and we're shifting the unit of the cost from, say, the ticket or just the plain transaction to the millisecond. In other words, the value that you can actually calculate for that is so much more than just getting the job done. There's zero wait time. And when we look at financial drivers around us, that ability gives us so much more flexibility in what we want to do. So you look at two use cases over here. One is hyper-personalization. This is something that Agentic can do for us. If you think about a travel concierge as an example, traditionally we might have go onto a site, it would recommend flights based on our history. But an agentic concierge would actually manage that friction of travel by monitoring the real-time context of it. For example, if the flight is delayed, the agent doesn't simply notify you and leave it. It can check for other flights. It can check your calendar. Are you available to travel on other dates? It can rebook the transfers, rebook your Uber. It can message your hotel that you're going to be late. So much more. Now, how would you actually quantify that value in that hyper-personalization? It's very, very difficult,
Yeah,
but it's key
that
to
makes sense.
actually do
I
that.
actually have an agentic system, and often people think, well, it's the time that it's saving. It's not just the hours. You don't just need to focus on the hours, the human hours that this new agentic system is saving. You also need to create additional KPIs. It's that value piece. It means we can close, for example, more deals faster, so the time shrink. The
Sure.
number of deals may be increased. And yes, the human hours, for sure, we are saving X amount of human hours every single week. And yes, there is an impact on the bottom line. How many more deals are closing? So
Yes.
I find that this is something that very important for enterprises to think.
Yeah. And Alina, even something as tangible or non-tangible, the way depending on how you look at it, but maybe I think subjective is the word I'm looking for, as customer satisfaction.
Yes.
You know, if it's gone, if the time taken to do a transaction goes to milliseconds as opposed to 15
Yeah.
minutes or an hour, or typically everybody was used to logging a ticket if you make a
Yep.
purchase that you didn't want and you get a response saying we'll attend to you within 24 hours. That is no longer customer service. Customer service is it's dealt with. It's
Yeah.
made a
So
decision.
so think about the bank. Let's say mortgages. Instead of spending a week or so waiting for that deal, you may be looking at 3 days instead of those 5 or 7 days. That means you can make things happen faster. The customer is happy, everybody is happy. And oftentimes, you can also look at another metric I find is the risk metric. Some agentic systems actually amplify those risks, but others could actually reduce it. They could actually have a positive impact on the
Yes.
overall risk reduction within the enterprise because you are, let's say, reporting things or doing things in that process, in that pipeline within the right time frame.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And I also like that I would add in within the right governance as well,
Yes.
because you're creating this agentic system, you can put in those guardrails and you can put in the governance in that process and therefore also reduce your risk in that. I
Mhm.
like this case study over here. So CVS has got a great case study where they achieved 50% reduction in their live agent chat. So they've got 380,000 people in the organization that typically use the phone to call into a call center to actually resolve things like, I don't have this particular medication, what can I use instead? Various queries that come in from around the country. And within 30 days, they reduced that to about 50% on their chat volume, which is absolutely fantastic. What we're finding, though, is that, especially with Agentic, is companies are deploying these point solutions. And I've got here cool agents, because it typically is, oh, yeah, that would be really cool if we could do that. That's the sentiment that happens. And so you end up getting these disparate point solutions. And what I really would recommend to people is to actually look at an orchestration agent deployment. So you have this orchestration layer where you're utilizing something like LangGraph or AutoGen and use that as the orchestration layer as well. Really important to be able to understand what is going on in that environment. Coming back to what we were talking about the risk, And if we looked at those things as well, specifically to how to minimize the risk on your return that you can get on these particular systems, we want to firstly make sure that at the foundational level, there's the right things on privacy, on security, and safety compliance. And then you move to the risk-based stuff, which is context-specific. So the guardrails for fintech, like you were talking about, that agent, as opposed to an agent that is just creating a marketing document. Obviously, in healthcare, in finance, there's so much more that can go wrong. And then there's the societal aspect of the risk, where actually you could land up losing that skill within the business. And so to still keep those human in the loop capabilities, and I prefer a term which is human on the loop, especially with agentic systems. And the reason is that a human in the loop typically means that a flow will go through until a point, and then it gets passed to a human for a decision. And if you create your agentic system with that human there, that's going to be your bottleneck. And then the system is still as slow as it always was because you're reliant on somebody pressing play in order to go forward. If you have a human on the loop, it is managing by exception. Only when there's those rare cases that fall with outside of the norm, then it goes to that human who then will actually adjudicate whether that transaction should go forward or not. So it's somebody managing by exception as opposed to every single transaction going through to that particular person. These continuous data loops can also replace the static annual planning. And that's another recommendation, especially with ROI, is to continuously measure this and make sure that you are keeping tabs of, is the system delivering what you thought it was going to deliver? And if it isn't, change. Don't go and set this course going for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to 12 months and not change your plan in that period of time. You have the beauty here of a system that is flexible and that you can change. And then every human intervention, this is again the beauty of Agentic. Every time something has to be corrected, the system has that ability in order to train and to learn from it. And so it's another aspect. This learning loop is never brought into an ROI. And it increases the ROI dramatically as it learns because it compounds the accuracy. So if you start with a system and it has 70% accuracy, after running that for 30 days, you might be up to 80% accuracy. What does that do? Changes your ROI. So if you measured the ROI right in the beginning, you are now undervaluing your particular solution. So I want to get into a couple formulas that you can use. And I do want to give one caution for the start of these formulas. And that is this AI success formula. So it's not this is not going to give you your actual, how do I measure the ROI on this, but it is going to give you the components that are going to lead you to success. The first is the fit. Is the task and the AI fit for this particular role? So often companies are tasked with doing an AI project, do something with AI, get an agent into our business so that we can tell the board, yes, we're doing this. It may not be fit for that particular task. There might be better ways of doing it. It might just be a pure programmable use case. What is the value? Don't go and do an AI use case if the value is not there. If it's going to cost you $200,000 to implement it, but it's only going to bring you $20,000 worth of value, don't do it. It's just not there. And then the component of your organizational enablement is critical as well. If the organization is not enabled, and I've heard some ratios being bandied around of for every dollar you spend in technology, you should be spending $3 in enabling your organization to utilize that technology as well. So that's a key component. But unfortunately, all of this can be weighed down by the legacy systems that are inherent in all of our businesses. Unless you're a startup, you're going to have some kind of legacy system that is there. And all too often, what we see is companies saying, well, we don't want to go and modernize our systems, but we want agents in our business and we want AI in the business. It is going to be hampered by those legacy systems. So I would suggest here that companies look at the same time in how do they modernize their system. And I want to give you a couple examples of how you can utilize this formula to find the right tasks and the right fit. So we go through a process like this where we've got a lovely flow, process flow that's over here. And we go and we analyze this entire process flow over here to see what is uniquely human and what can be machine ready and what sits in between, right? And obviously what we want to do first is attack those machine ready components. Those are the ones that are ripe for actually disruption or ripe for change within that business. Here's a fantastic example. This is a process that costs $1 billion. This entire process end to end is $1 billion. And out of that, you can see there is quite a few places over here that are green, ready for machine technology and for AI. And there's quite a lot of red as well in that. And if you looked at this entire process and you were given the task of you must get an agent to do this entire process, I would say that would be the wrong thing to do. And I love this quote. This quote was, the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. And I think that this applies so much to artificial intelligence and the way that companies are approaching AI these days. You need to look at everything, and there's a lot that's in there. And you can imagine in those processes, there's so much there that should not be touched by AI, but there's so much that should be touched. When we look at ROI, you're going to look at the total cost of ownership, and you're going to look at the various forms of the return to the business. When we examine total cost of ownership, again, a lot of companies are making mistakes here by looking only at those visible costs. And those visible costs are that initial platform licensing or the consumption costs. Typically, they will ask, how much is this going to be costing me on my AWS bill or on my Azure bill, my GCP bill? And those are my costs that are involved. No, there's a lot more. There's system integration that has to happen. And I've given a figure there of anywhere between 13,000 to 50,000 per legacy system to do those integration. There's training data preparation that has to be taken into account. Normally 20 to 30% of the total project cost. There's an engineering overhead. You've got to debug the system. You've got to go through everything and make sure that these processes are working properly. And so, and there's also the variable costs on the token consumption as well that can peak. So the real total cost of ownership, first get a handle on that in order to actually identify your ROI. And then when you look at the ROI, bear in mind that you need to take into consideration every aspect beyond the cost of that ticket or the cost of that person's salary. So, Alina, you were saying now that ticket velocity, that decision velocity is a key component. And involved in that decision velocity is what else can the people do with their time? What else, how many more clients can you serve if you can reduce that serving time of the customer by 95%? So we've got decision velocity, time compression, and repeatable workflows. So reducing case opening from 10 days to 30 minutes. Economic throughput, the capacity to handle complex processes without having to scale headcount. So another thing that's often left out is we've had this business at the moment, and this business can service maybe 5,000 clients. What happens if we now go and we increase this to 10,000 clients? would we need to get more headcount? So traditionally, you would have had to. In the agentic flow, you don't need to do that. And that's value. That's however many people you don't have to hire is additional value to the business. And then the cost per resolution. What's the true meaning and the true value of that cost for your particular clients that are out there? Not only the ticket deflection, but really the value of them getting an answer so quickly.
It does make sense. I was actually measuring all the agentic AI systems that my team put into production in the past year. And I actually did report on all these three things. It's the reduction that happened due to increased decision velocity, plus downstream processes that now can happen faster because of some of these things. The economic throughput, the capacity to handle more without actually scaling, that's important. And the actual bottom line impact, did we generate more sales? Did we close more deals? Did we do more business physically? So that's very obvious. Another obvious tends to be the hours saved, but it's not always obvious the how many, let's say, FTEs we didn't have to hire, or how much capacity we were able to unlock on the existing teams.
Yeah, I like that. So here's three recommendations for North Star metrics that should be used as at the basic level. The agent to human handoff rate. So how often does the AI hit an issue where it has to give up and it has to pass that through to a human? So that's a metric that you want to measure. The reasoning coherence score, which looks at the logic and the accuracy of autonomous decisions, right? So just getting the right answer is not good enough. It's like the math student who hands in their paper and says, I got the answer right, so why didn't I get 100%? And they say, but you never showed your workings. You never showed how you got to the answer. Therefore, the teacher can't give you that 100%. It's the same thing over here. If we have an agentic AI that is getting the right result at the end, but there's a flaw in the logic that it's going through, that is an accident waiting to happen. Because all that it has to do is get to the wrong kind of logic or the wrong kind of example, and the answer won't be right. And we've seen this. We've seen this in numerous cases where chatbots have given the wrong pricing for certain things, etc. And clients have held them to that. And then zero-touch resolution is the gold standard for agentic ROI over here. It's where the process is initiated and completed with zero human intervention. That score that you're really wanting to get to the maximum value. I get asked quite often, how long should a project take in order to test this? If I want to go and put in an agentic solution to my business, how long should we spend on this? Is this a year project? Is it 6 months? This is a great formula over here. I think within 90 days, you should be able to see where you're going and actually get to a decision on whether you're going to be putting this into production and whether you're really going to be continuing with this. So very simply, in your first 2 weeks, get those North Star metrics, define those 3 to 5 metrics that you really want to be focused on and measure and be pedantic about them. And they should be aligned to that zero-touch resolution. That's what you're aiming for. In day 15 to 45, you want to prove that value of that system in production. POCs have kind of fallen by the wayside in 2026. Why? Because they've been replaced with proof of value. So POC just changed to POV. They're very similar, but the difference between a proof of concept and proof of value is in production. Because they were seeing, we were seeing that companies were putting these solutions into place. They were either not seeing the value as a proof of concept when it wasn't in production because it wasn't dealing with the right data, or they were not really seeing the full value that could have been utilized by this. So we've really moved this to proof of value. And then should that show that value in that 45 days, move it and formalize it into your AI Center of Excellence and structure the governance and the industrialization of that solution to make sure that it can span. Alina, anything you want to discuss on that before I just go to 3 pitfalls that I'll say beware of?
I think it's reasonable within 90 days to actually have something. If you're in a regulated industry, then you're definitely going to be facing additional challenges. You might not be able to go as fast because you would need monitored environments, especially if you're working with sensitive data, PII data, financial data, pen data. You would need that monitoring those maybe standalone environments, and you would need to have a bit more control there.
Yeah.
It is possible. It is definitely possible. I work myself in a regulated industry, financial industry, with agentic system, and I am able to go from 0 to 90. But that's because I have got certain approved patterns from an architecture point of view, information security point of view. There's compliance. Now, you said something on the previous slide, how much AI can do without that human. And the scale and the speed is without having that human in the loop. But let me ask you this question. Do you want AI to approve your mortgage? Maybe not. Do you want AI to say, hey, Kevin, you know what? You're not getting that 1 million mortgage and you're not getting that credit card because, well, our data just says what it says.
Yes.
You actually do want, from a compliance point of view, you do want that human in the loop 100% of the times. The AI may be speeding up that process. It might be used to, let's say, scan that application, see if anything is missing, extract the data, populate certain fields. It takes some maybe reasoning around the data, that flow, but still keep that human in the loop. It can for sure speed up quite a bit. So maybe
Yes.
you're going to be getting that mortgage faster, but you do not want AI to take that decision. So certain processes, you do not want it there. But for many, for example, Kevin, you forgot your password and you want an AI agent to figure this out, that you are you, and maybe help you reset that password. That's completely reasonable. But for many companies out there, this is a very it's very reasonable in 90 days to go not just to a POC, but towards that POV and that use case to generate that value in production.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I really agree with you in the financial industry for sure. So let's look at a couple of the pitfalls and the traps that are involved in this that can make your ROI go out the window very quickly. The first one is this trap of non-determinism, and this is where your agent, your AI agent, goes into an infinite loop. So it starts the process, it reasons through what it needs to do, the action fails. So it tried route A, it fails. It goes back, it tries route B, that fails. What does it do? It goes back to route A and tries it again. It fails. It goes back to route B. And this carries on and carries on. And so quite a few companies learned the hard way by having skyrocketing bills, consumption bills, that they need to put in place this check step budget. And the check step budget says, We will try 5 times as an example. I'm giving you a random number, however many times you decide is important. Try it 5 times. If it doesn't work in those times, escalate to a human immediately. Don't keep going around.
Another one is to put another agent. So what we do is not just do this, but another agent, which is a QA agent, a quality assurance agent, on top of the first guy to make sure that the output is reasonable and what the first agent is doing making sense. So you can do that. Plus, it's kind of AI monitoring AI.
Yeah.
Your cost might be going up, but the quality and the value is definitely going to increase.
Yeah, I love that technique of using AI to adjudicate what another AI is doing. It really is a nice way of putting some safety measures in place. The second pitfall is infrastructure, old legacy infrastructure. This is quite a big barrier. So I would evaluate your organization and look towards that modernization. Know that the modernization is going to happen some stage, right? If you've got old systems there at some stage, they are going to have to be rebuilt. They're going to have to be refactored. If I look at how we are doing work in 2026 as to how we were doing it in 2024 and 2025 on modernization, it is so different. It's roughly about 25% of the time and cost in order to modernize. So now is a fantastic time to modernize. And then pitfall 3, Alina, you alluded to this earlier on, is the security and the expanded attack surface. So you can have all the best intentions for your return that you're going to get on your agent, and one negative aspect of security that can go through can blow that out of the water very quickly as well. So the new threat vectors are things like indirect prompt injection. So it gets the document that the agent is reading. There's a prompt within that document that gets it to do something. Agent impersonation, so fake agents that could be acting as billing identities, and semantic data leakage, where the agent shares PII data due to lack of the context. That's awareness. Critical in healthcare, critical in financial sector as well. And so how do we mitigate this? We treat agents as untrusted users, and we use this principle of least privileges. I remember very clearly when agents first came out, and I tried to set one up for myself. I thought, this is fantastic. All I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my own agent that when I get any cell phone bills, or I get my Enercare or my hydro bill, it's going to pick it up from my email. It's going to go into the bank. It's going to create the payment. Fantastic. I was setting everything up and got to the point where it said, can I have your banking password, please? and that's where I said, okay, I'm not quite comfortable with this yet. So, it's when we feel it ourselves and we feel that release of the authority that we're giving with these things, we start to understand. So how do we do this transition from general tech spend to this outcome-led ROI? I would recommend some different strategies depending on the persona. For CFOs, so if you're a CFO, you're going to be speaking to a CFO that's out there. Get away from this variable per token consumption. How much is this costing us? Oh, it's costing us, it's doing 10,000 tokens per request, and forget it. You want to look to an outcome-led profit and loss allocation based on the straight-through processing. If we can get this to be not touched by a human, what is the saving that we can get on it, and what are we going to be making on this? For the operations officer, you want an operational dashboard for them, prioritizing this agent to human handoff rate, where they can monitor these things and they can feel, wow, there's value in this for them. And then for the CIO, the CISO, making sure that they are comfortable with the guardrails that are in place before moving this into production. So you might run a pilot in production on a smaller basis, but when you scale it, make sure that those things are all in place. In summary, Alina, I'm going to leave everybody with this summary infographic over here. Just keep thinking about agents as this versus chatbots as the scripts versus adaptive reasoning. I've given you that 50% that CVS achieved there, and you can see the difference between the traditional RPA and agentic AI, going for that zero-touch resolution, machine-to-machine handoff, and that having that core driver of a strategic agility and reasoning. Only 20% of companies are actually measuring this stuff correct these days. So if you can get ahead of that, you will be really paving the way for agentic AI success within your companies. I think what we're going to see is many agentic projects being shut down due to not measuring the ROI properly. And that is a mistake, because I have no doubt that the value is there and companies can realize that value. So if there are any questions, happy to take them. But thank you, Alina. Thanks for inviting me to speak. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We do have a couple questions. I think you just touched on them. The question about traditional ROI models that fall short. And in your experience, what is overlooked in non-financial metrics that can predict future financial success in agentic flows?
Yeah, so we did speak about many of these things that are overlooked. The opportunity cost is something that is critical. So if you are freeing up, and we use a model where we use a Rubik's Cube to say, here is a person in your organization. I wish I had a Rubik's Cube around here. Here is the person. They have all of these facets of their job that they do. Some of those, we can remove those pieces of that cube and hand it off to an agent to do that role for them. Think about, Alina, you were talking about that person who's approving the mortgage loan. That person can have the things removed like the initial credit check. They don't need to do that. That can be done automatically by the system, and it can adjudicate whether it should pass that gate first. Then what is their current salary? That's another check that can be done automatically and through an agent. But once all that data is collected, it can then bring it to them. Now you've got all of these missing components from this Rubik's Cube. What can you do with those? That is amazing, untapped potential that is there, that is never mentioned or measured in the ROI calculation, right? So redeploying those skills, looking for additional ways. If it's sellers that you are freeing up their time, they can deal with more clients. So I would say one of the key things to look at is all of those almost below the surface conditions that are freed up by utilizing agents. And there's a value to that. Try and get to the value. We've got one tool, as a clear example, one tool that does regulatory filings for utility companies. And if you utilize that, you might say, oh, well, I saved myself 200 hours in doing those regulatory filings. What's the value of that, of my 200 hours? There's my ROI. No. The ROI is, how many times were you having to redo those filings in the past? Oh, we would have to redo them probably about 5 times. 5 times. So now you couldn't go forward with that business proposal until that was finalized. Did they take that into account? No, they didn't. So you have to really investigate all of these areas.
Yep. Also, we have a similar thing. It's not just the hours and the number of reports that AI was able to speed up down from, let's say, hours and weeks Now it can write that report in 30 minutes. Well, it can write it in seconds, but it now takes that human individual and that officer, it now takes maybe half an hour to validate, where it used to take them maybe up to a week of time to produce such a report. But it's not the X amount of hours that we are saving. It also is what happens if, let's say, you didn't file that report on time. You could get
Yes,
slapped with a fine. You can run into serious problems. It could be millions of dollars that of a fine that you're going to be facing. Now you're able to keep up with your regulatory reporting. And I think it's a wonderful use case. And when I measure the ROI, I don't just report how many hours or how many reports we produced. It's also you know, this saves, yes, X hours, but it also unlocks downstream and it also reduces that risk and reducing or even not having that backlog, which may have
yes,
existed
yes,
prior.
absolutely agree.
One last question before we wrap up. Traditional AI evaluation focuses on the final answer, but for agents, it's a reasoning path. That matters. So how do we evaluate the accuracy of intermediate tool calls?
Mhm.
And I'm going to expand on that. Let's say you have multiple agents, and each agent might have different accuracy associated with it. And you might have an agentic system.
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Hassan. I think you hit on a wonderful point there, where many agents are designed in a way where you can't see what's happening in those intermediate steps. And I mentioned using that orchestration layer and for these multi-agent controls, so you can see where they are handed off. And I really think that the gold standard is to measure your accuracy of intermediate calls as well. If you really want to get granular, that's what you should be doing. You can utilize those orchestration layers to make sure that you are investigating those in between points as well. But you're right, it's not about only the final answer. It is about how it got there. And don't forget that in getting to that final answer, we need to always bear in mind that we are still looking after all the good things in responsible AI, like is the data biased? Is our agent coming up with a biased view? I would imagine, Alina, that is in approving loans, that is so critical that you need to make sure that it is fair, unbiased, and all of those good things as
Well,
well.
rest assured, we do not have AI approving loans at the bank, but I just wanted to see your reaction there. Um, but but today was wonderful, great discussion, Kevin. It was great to have you. And before we wrap up for the evening, any parting words to our audience?
Yes, I I am loving the stage where we are in technology in the world at the moment. It is such an exciting stage. I think that we are limited by our knowledge of what we know at the moment. So, thank you to you for Alina for putting these things together, and for AI Future Leaders and the work that you do in helping to educate people. I think that the more educated we are, the better the future of technology is. And the biggest danger that we have is there are so many people out there who don't understand the nature of this. So share your knowledge, folks. Speak to people, tell them about agents, tell them about the wonderful things that it can do, and just really enjoy it and embrace it. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Alina.
Thank you, Kevin. It was great to have you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We just put some information into the chat. Do follow, check us out. We are on LinkedIn, on YouTube. This recording is going to be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone who has taken the time to join us this evening. Do stay current, keep learning. What we are saying is learn today. Learn today, lead tomorrow. You have to learn about AI to stay current with AI, to drive that value with
Yeah.
AI. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Alina. Bye.